happening lately when we're talking about finances, when we're talking about the round that we've seen between the Cabinet Secretary and the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi trying to restructure also the fees structure itself. And this drew a lot of debate, matters that are in court right now. What is truly happening with our universities? Looking at the curricula, we have the CBC as well, but people are saying, yeah, we might be having all these changes in our curricula, but where is the chocking point when it comes to the university? Is it complementing what CBC is currently doing? And generally, when it comes to research, it seems also our universities in Kenya, they're lagging behind, but we've had also the academician really crying foul on the funding from government, and the government is not really supporting the universities, or even those researchers that come to bear, they're not utilized by the government at all. So there is that discrepancy. But before even we drill deeper on that, I want just to whip up the Standard, which is headlining also a very interesting story, and this has been in the public arena lately, the corporal punishment. If we may just have the Standard on screen as well. Caning teachers to pay 4.2 million shillings amid call to change law. And Cabinet Secretary Matiang'i has also vouched for the reinstatement of a corporal punishment. We should be punishing our children. We should be caning them. So I want to pick the brains of, our guests this morning to just tell us on this new development, and we can see this is bound to invoke, fear and trepidation to our teachers, if at all they're going to take the corporal punishment back to classrooms. We have teachers here who are punished, or a teacher has punished a student for indiscipline in March and inflicted injuries. And yesterday, a judge found that the two teachers and school had violated the minors' rights. Parents sued after police failed to press criminal charges. Teachers now say gaps in the Children's Act and the Basic Education Act must be addressed to stem indiscipline among learners. And I want to cross over to you and start with Tufosa Kwaka, who's a principal of St. Paul's University, to just give us, your reaction on this particular development as well. Good morning, good to see you. Tufosa.
Good morning, Dibal, and good to see you too, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, so that headline for me tells me that we have a deeper problem, and reinstating corporal punishment or withdrawing it doesn't resolve the problem. We need to go to the root of the problem. What is the root of the indiscipline in our children? On the other hand, we need to think about the teachers. By the time a teacher is punishing a child and inflicting injuries to the extent that we have been reading in the news of late, tells you that there's also a certain challenge there with that teacher. In the sense of the punishment which is meant to correct, instead injuring the child. So as a society, I think we need to step back and relook our education system, relook the key players in this education system, and begin to really tease out what those root issues are. There could be issues with the system itself, issues also with the children, but also upbringing at home, and then also issues, and so when you talk about children and home, you're talking about the parents who are a key stakeholder here, then looking at our teachers, their training, but also what is happening generally in society. So those would be my opening remarks, but it is very sad that as a society we are at that level.
Michael, looking at this development and in light of what has been on the public arena as well as I've mentioned, what is your say? What is your turn of thought?
When I've been reading and hearing about this latest call for the return of corporal punishment, I'm reminded of conversations I used to have with Jeff Griffin, who led Starehe Boys Center and was its founder. And he used to say that people would come, headmasters from other schools, to visit Starehe to find out why they didn't have a discipline problem. And what he would explain to them is that you must nurture self-discipline. And it relates to what you were saying. And the question is, how do you do that? I took part in the development of the curriculum for values-based education for the new curriculum, the new CBC, and that is a way of teachers interacting with learners to discuss, to absorb, to develop the sort of values that makes people work together, teachers and learners, to learn and grow together. And if you have that kind of a culture, then you're much less likely to have these rebellious behaviors by children. And it's the same at any level in any organization, but it starts there at the school. And if the teachers are developed in the way that you've just been hearing, then they make the students their customers and their partners, and self-discipline is what emerges, an early development of maturity.
Right, early development of maturity. But we can see there is a new development here. Now we are seeing the children's rights, and also a case now where the teachers have to discipline the children. So they're torn in between, what do? We have the CS saying we should reinstate the corporal punishment, but now also that particular whip of the children's rights also from the law is coming to bear as well. How do we have and strike a balance that we are not really violating their rights, but yet we have also to instill discipline? Tofosa, let's begin with you.
You know, Dibal, I actually want to step again, you know, just picking from what Mike was saying. I think self-discipline needs to be taught from home. It needs to be taught from home so that as this child begins to learn about the world that they are in, we are instilling in them that they have to be personally responsible for their lives. So they take ownership for the way they're conducting themselves. So there needs to be something done even with parents, and parents to realize that they cannot abdicate their responsibility to schools. But how do we balance the two? I believe it is by having that sense of community, and this I'm just talking about it from a national perspective. How are we instilling in ourselves what is our national value? Some of those things is, how do we respect people, humanity? You know, you know, when we talk about Bantu, Utu, yes. In Kiswahili, Utu, the fact that you must respect humanness, if there's a word, I don't think there's a word like that, but allow me to use it, to respect the fact that this is a human being, I am a human being, and even though they are a child, they are a whole human being. Therefore, my responsibility, going back to our values, would be, if I'm a teacher, therefore to instill the fact that I'm responsible for creating a wholesome human being. And if I'm a parent, I'm responsible for upbringing and nurturing a wholesome human being. And part of that is instilling responsibility, self-leadership, leading my own self. And so if I'm leading my own self, by the way, as a teacher, it means that I will not be overtaken by emotions if I'm trying to bring a discipline, or if I'm trying to discipline a child. Because what is the essence of discipline? It is to correct, not to punish. You see, when we talk about punishment, then we create an environment of fear. So I avoid doing things because I fear. But I should be doing things, and my teacher should be there to correct me. And I think that is where we have lost it. We look at it, when we are doing it, it is for punishment. But it really should be for correction. The other bit to it, Dibal, is that when you look at studies that have been done on anything, on reinforcement, when you employ negative tactics or strategies, then what you do is you have deterrent. But what you need to be doing is actually have a positive reinforcement, which means that people then want to do the right thing. Not to avoid the wrong thing, but to do the right thing. Those two are similar but very different. And I think that is what we really need to get to.
Indeed. And maybe, Mike Eldon, you can also enlighten us on the mode of parenting that currently we can see at play. That we have the enrage and the engage mode of parenting. And parents are more inclined to the enraging, which sometimes has repercussions, where we have flare-ups and we have, the blowbacks that, like we can see in schools being banned, the infernos, the arsonists as well. Is it also the mode of parenting that is being inculcated right now that is at fault, that we're enraging our children instead of engaging them, to understand them, to have a conversation with them?
Well, you're right, and this is a question of how parents, teachers view their children. I think too often people underestimate the extent to which people at a very young age can have these kinds of conversations that we're having here. And I have found with my children, with my grandchildren, as I interact with young people, that it's amazing the extent to which you can have almost adult conversations rather than the parent-child ones. Mm-hmm. And I don't know to what extent in the Ministry of Education or wherever, there has been a study of what do the schools where there have been these sorts of riots and burnings and everything, what do they have in common? Mm-hmm. What do they have in common about the style of the head teacher, of the board of management, of the teachers, of the parents? And what are those where there are no problems, where they are partners who just get on with their learning in the same country at the same time with the same national values or lack thereof? And how do we shift the needle to have more behavior of the positive kind, and again that we've just been hearing about, of self-discipline, self-leadership? I like that term very much. So that you don't need parenting, you don't need discipline, because it comes naturally, because it's a good idea. It's for your own benefit. However much you need to hold back and make some short-term sacrifices, it's for the purpose of your longer-term development. Mm-hmm. I think that's the conversation between mature people, including mature, very young children, that is possible to have, and that I imagine the homes and the schools where there are good relationships and good partnerships between the elders and the young ones are present.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, you've mentioned the fact that you have been very instrumental in development of the value-based education with the current CBC as well. So where is the disconnect in installing these values? As enshrined, first we know Article 10 of the Constitution, we have 17 of them, the national values. But when we are trying to implement them, there is where, the rubber does not meet the road.
Well, I'm glad that this is the third week running where on a Friday morning you've mentioned the national values, Dabal, and the fact that there's insufficient attention paid to them by leaders. If there were more conversations about our values from our leaders, and if they were more role models for these national values, then we would be better off. But the question is, okay, they do and don't do what they do as our national high-profile leaders, but what do I do in my home as a parent, as a grandparent? What do I do as a head teacher or a teacher in the school to role model national values? And everyone has the same values. Every religion has the same values. Every organization does. And it's always about integrity and collaboration and all these good things. It's not rocket science. The question is, do you practice it, and do you have conversations about it at all levels, from the home to the whole country and beyond? And that is what leadership is about. That's why we're here on Friday mornings, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Tofosa, well, That being the case right now, because you can see it begins, it runs through the whole gamut, beginning from the lower primary all the way to university. And primarily today we're focusing on leadership in a higher, of course, echelon of learning. That is the university, and maybe also to some extent, the TVETs as well. But I just wanted to ask this simple question. What seems to be bedeviling our universities currently? Because we can see things are not okay. In terms of finances, things are not okay. The running of these institutions is a niggling worry, so to speak, currently. And we have also the CS, case in point, University of Nairobi, and I know you cannot be able to hold brief for them as well, but that really set the tone also for the conversation, where we had all these fee structures, and the CS was speaking, from another point of view, and we had the Vice Chancellor also taking another angle altogether, though not seeing eye to eye, and the matter also was, brought to the courts as well. But what is currently ailing our universities?
I think what is ailing our universities is the fact that things have changed. And I think it's Peter Drucker who said that our universities will not survive what is coming. And I think he said that quite a while back. And we can see that globally there is a change. And COVID has accelerated that change. And it is unfortunate that generally speaking, universities have remained to be very resistant to change internally, and have wanted to remain to be the traditional brick and mortar institutions. And of course they've been glorious. I mean, when you would walk into a university, you would feel that sense of importance and arrival. But that has changed because the world has changed, and the way our learners want learning has also changed. So I think what has happened is that the traditional model of universities is what we have been trying to push forth, whereas the forces of change are saying to us, you need to have transformation. So what kind of transformation am I talking about? Thinking about university education differently. Thinking about the student who is coming through is a very different type of student, and therefore the leadership has to relook or reimagine their model and recreate it so that it can be able to deliver what our students want both now but also in the future. And then also relook the education delivery model, but also the lecturers. Earlier on we were discussing with Mike about moving from the traditional lecturer who comes to bunk, moving from that model into a facilitator who is there to engage the learners and facilitate learning through discussion and through collaboration. And that's a very different ballgame if that is to happen. We're also seeing trends globally where learners no longer want to come and do 4 years or 3 years for the degree programs, but they are happy to do a module here, a module there, and eventually, it creates something. So there is a change, and unfortunately, the forces that resist change are very strong within universities. That would be my take.
All right, Mike Eldon, you've been also the chair of various universities, KCA being one of them. From your own perspective, we have some 4 key players maybe who are sleeping on the job. That will be the Ministry of Education, not playing their role honestly and sincerely when it comes to funding of these universities. And they, on the other hand, are saying also universities, they should be also having their own source revenue, through research. We have also academicians from the Western part of the world who are known to fund the government. Instead of expecting funds from the government, it operates the other way. But in this country, maybe from a broader perspective to begin with, before we now get granular with issues, you can just paint a picture for us as well.
My experience at KCA University, chairing the council there, was a wonderful one, because we developed this culture of all working together between myself as chair of the council, with my fellow council members, with the Vice-Chancellor and his team of a senior management team, which he developed so nicely, the Chancellor, the Senate, the student leaders, all part of one community with aligned vision and values. That is leadership. That's what we were talking about before at the school level. And I said it goes all the way up to the national level, and it does not exclude universities. And at the center of this is viewing the students and their sponsors, their parents, whoever, as customers, and having that relationship to satisfy the customer by delivering relevant learning that leads to self-employability and employability. Mm-hmm. And when that works, you don't have problems. You attract good students, they're happy to pay their fees, you have lean expenditure with the faculty and non-faculty members and infrastructure and IT and so forth. That's management now with leadership. So it's just like with the schools, you've got this whole spectrum, from ones that are doing well despite COVID, despite all the other issues that others have, and you have others that even if we didn't have COVID wouldn't be doing well. So again, what do the ones that are doing well have in common? And it is this leadership of bringing people together. From what I understand, there are too many university leaders, too many vice-chancellors who are pretty much holding themselves back in their offices and not interacting with students, not doing this this management by walking about and listening to the issues and influencing the students and influencing the faculty. Also, we as council members at KCA interacted not just with the Vice-Chancellor, not just with the gentleman in charge of finance and so forth, but we interacted freely with faculty, with students. We were encouraged to do that because there was high trust between us all. We knew it wouldn't be gossiping and complaining, but rather getting feedback in order to see how to move to the next level, how to develop and implement and adapt strategy. And it is the question of values. And I say again, Debal, I'm so happy you keep coming back to that, because not enough people do. In fact, very few do. And it is those who do and who practice those values, who discuss them, who have conversations about them, and spread those values, nurture them, not inculcate, not instill, but nurture good values, because it's a good idea for the common good.
Right, thank you. Thank you. We have Dr. Josephine Ojambo, who's joined us as well, and I would like to get also introductory remarks from her as well before we take a short break. Josephine, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. And good morning to Mike and our colleague on the other platform.
Yes, so you've joined the conversation, albeit a bit late, but we're still trying to establish what is really bedeviling our institution so far as it is right now. And you are, of course, in the thick of things, you being a lecturer at Kenyatta University. But broadly speaking, what will be your perspective?
I have been listening to the other two panelists, and I do agree with them in a number of areas. One is the fact that leadership, particularly leadership that's in the academic setting, should be driven by values. And these values should be able to motivate others within the same leadership setting. Whether the motivation is within a department or faculty, or even to motivate those working as lecturers, motivate the students. This motivation, when aligned, will produce a well-functional institution. We're talking about institution of higher learning. But let me dig a little deeper into what we mean. I think that in order that we have good leadership at universities, we must be able to see that there's a difference between leadership per se and management. We're talking about the ability to motivate, to inspire, talking about the ability to be decisive, to take actions that will foster unity, alignment, but will also foster creativity, will support innovation. In order to attain that kind of leadership, there must be a certain amount of empowerment of the leader, so that when that leader does take an action, he or she is able to see it through to the end in an environment of trust, so that we have leadership that feels trusted, that is confident to take actions, so that we can move forward with creation of new innovation. I also want to move forward and say we need results in leadership. We need to be able to say that our university is delivering in terms of performance, delivering on its legal structure, delivering in terms of outcomes. We've heard a little bit about leaders living their values. I've heard that from Mike. It's important that we look at university leadership that's inspired intrinsically. Leaders in a university should see that their role is to inspire from their own intrinsic values. So they're not living out a set of ideas, philosophies, or motivations from outside, but will intrinsically wake up every day and say, I'm going out there to inspire my students to work within my department, to work as part of a university community that's part of a larger setting. Intrinsic inspiration. I think that's the only thing that will last in terms of inspiring our universities. So for me, those are my introductory thoughts.
Fantastic. Thank you. Right, we're eagerly expecting also to be joined by Professor Chacha Nyaigoti Chacha, who's a former Commission for Higher Education chair. He will be also be able to tell us why that particular commission was offering charters, despite the fact that many people were decrying some of these institutions could not really pass muster. There was not really proper inspection and should not have been awarded the charters as well. We've seen the mushrooming of many universities, the satellite universities, and the government has come to the fore and said, no, we need to actually shut down some of these satellite universities, the kiosks universities, you know. Everywhere was a university, and turning the technical institutions to universities as well. So as all this development brought the crisis that we have currently in terms of financing these institutions as well. We delve deeper into that on the other side of a break. I hope Chacha Nyaigoti Chacha will be here. Thank you.